I would like to take you back to that November. We're going to go to Paris. It's Mormeck. Not only is he the WBA champion, he's the WBC champion. Not only is he a double world champion, he's promoted by Don King. You're fighting him in his backyard. But more than that, and this is really important, he's considered the #1 cruiserweight in the world. He hasn't just got a world title, he's the #1 cruiserweight, Dave. Was there any fear inside you?
Yeah, as you said, #1, he was a Ring Magazine champion. And prior to my fight, he held the IBF, WBC and WBA titles. Before my fight, I think they stripped him of the IBF. So that wasn't on the line when he fought me. But as you said, he was considered #1. And it was a fight I knew if I was to get it a little bit wrong, if I wasn't in the right shape, if I did the wrong thing in the fight, if I let my head, sort of my heart rule my head, I could come unstuck, as it had happened before against Carl Thompson, 3.5 years prior to that night in November 2007. So it was a fight I wasn't scared of, but I was aware he had the style to beat me. If you could pick my worst opponent, there'd be someone who basically looked just like Mormeck. He had a very tight guard. He didn't engage at long range. He wanted to get inside underneath my punches, and he's someone who'd force me to fight at close range. And I've never been considered, and never considered myself a close range fighter. And I had to learn how to fight inside.
Now, you called yourself there, or you referred to yourself as an upstart, and in many ways, your young coach, only a few years older than you, Adam Booth, was also an upstart, and I'm delighted to say that Adam joins us now. Adam, before we talk about actually arriving in Paris and the nuts and bolts leading up to the Mormeck fight, was David ready?
By the time we arrived at the Mormeck fight, he wasn't just in the right stage of his career as a professional fighter, and he was a genuine mandatory challenger for that title. But he'd learned the lessons, he'd toughened himself up mentally. He was always confident, always heavy-handed, a sharpshooter of a style, and we knew that Mormeck's style was a tuck-up leech, where he wanted David to drain his energy. So when we arrived in Paris, every training camp has issues, and in the training camp to that fight, don't know if David remembers, but he got little metal shards in his eye, and he was walking around with a half blind for the best part of a couple of weeks because he had a patch on his eye. So there was all these like rocky moments through the training, but because the fight got delayed for so long, by the time we got to Paris, it had come full circle, and it definitely, looking back, there was definitely a sense that everything was right, and all of the experience and the knocks and the mistakes and the injuries and the downsides all came together to galvanize him as, yes, a young fighter, but one who was absolutely ready in every sense for that fight. And we talked about how to prepare for that style, and we can talk later about the little drills that we did to prepare him for the eventuality of that fight. And I would say that of all the ones I've been involved in, that played out how David prepared for it to.
Adam, you can prepare for the fight, that's no problem. You can prepare for Mormeck. You can go through drills, as you mentioned there. We'll delve into those as we watch the fight a little bit later. But what you can't prepare for was the amount of intimidation that was there once you arrived from the full Don King show. Richie Giagetti was there. Larry Holmes's man. Don King and his people were there. And my recollection is they put you certainly under a bit of pressure. You were a young kid. You were an upstart yourself as a trainer. Yeah, I mean,
there were certainly some little things that they fired my way to try and unsettle me. But I thought I'd prepared myself for that as well as I could have done. And you have to have, if you don't have experience to prove you know what you're doing, you just have to have this blind belief. And I had this blind belief that I did know what I was doing, and that the blind belief that David put into me, naively or not, having no track record of proving myself as a coach at world level. It all came to a head in the 17 weeks of preparing for that fight and that week in Paris. Yeah, Don King tried to unsettle me a couple of times, but I managed to steady myself just to make sure I could do my job, because ultimately Doesn't matter what they do to me. David was the better fighter of the two, and he was ready to prove it.
And Dave, there was absolutely no problems with you. You were just there. In fact, if anything, Dave, I recall, you were slightly too relaxed, if anything.
I tried to be as relaxed as I can be. As you said, like for instance, my bags didn't arrive at the airport. I remember there was a massive issue that Adam had to deal with regarding the gloves. We made sure in the contract that we had out which were the specific gloves I required. And they tried to say when we got there, no, you have to wear these gloves, which were the complete opposite gloves that I'd want to wear, bust my hands up. So we did before the fight. They tried so many different little moves. With, as you said, Adam it was his first big world title fight, and it was my first world title fight. And they probably thought he was a bit wet behind the ears, and we'd go along with what they wanted. But you know, as Adam said, he was ready for all the tricks that someone like a Don King or the promoters could have brought to the table. And you know, you would have thought it would have been our 10th world title fight if you'd have saw the setup and the way we did things, and even to the point where they tried to put us in a tiny little changing room right before the fight, and we said no, and we went around and found the actual whole sports hall. So in the warm up for that fight, we actually had a basketball court as our changing room when they tried to put us in one which was about 6 foot by 9 foot or something, and you got 7 or 8 people in the team. It wouldn't have worked. So we got there early, we figured it out, and it was just a nice relief when we walked up the stairs from the basketball court, and then we heard "Ain't no stopping us now." That's when I knew. I thought, this is it. We got through all the little potential hurdles, and I'm in best shape of my life. And we was walking to the ring, and I remember, that was the first time I ever played "Ain't no stopping us now" for any fight. And it felt right. Going into a foreign opponent's hometown, you need a song that's going to get people in the right mood. I knew they probably wanted to boo me, but no one can boo when McFadden and Whitehead are singing "Ain't no stopping us now." Everyone got on their feet, everyone was dancing and singing, and I walked out and it felt like it was my hometown, and it worked out well. And ever since that day, I've played that same song. So that was the first one for me.
That's it. We're going to take you to Paris very shortly. When we come back after the break, it's the fight. It's Mormeck. It's Haye. So it's time for the fight. David Haye's in the ring. He's had "Ain't No Stopping Us Now" for the first time. Frank Malone is in the ring. At this point, Dave, have you realised just how serious a task this is?
Yeah, I knew this was it. I knew this was the big one. I'd had tough fights with guys with similar styles. 2 fights prior to this, I fought an unbeaten fighter, Jacob Fragameni, for the WBC mandatory position. And that was a tough fight. He was short, come forward, squat, threw lots of punches in close. And I struggled in that fight. I got a big cut over my eye. I managed to stop him and win the fight, but I learned some tough lessons in that fight.
And that had been a year previously. You'd had to wait for this fight. It had been delayed by a couple of months. There are the raw stats. He's a few years older. You're a few years younger. Your reach is longer and you're taller. It's that simple. But he's got the experience, he's got the skill set, and he's at home, Dave. You are the underdog overseas.
I knew that this fight, it would have been a bad idea to try to win this fight on points, as you say, on a Don King promoted event, when you've got a Don King fighter in front of you on foreign soil. The idea was to maintain a low punch output whilst doing as much damage as possible, and from round 7 start picking it up.
Let's go now to the centre of the ring and the start of the first round. We're going to watch rounds number 1, rounds number 4 and rounds number 7, Dave. Here we are at the very start, the first bell. And you can sense his support, Dave. You can sense he's the hometown fighter. We can hear it.
He knew it, I knew it, everybody knew it. And he was on a high over there. He'd seen the fact I'd been stopped before, where I showed a lack of stamina, a lack of toughness, and to beat Mormeck, you have to have both of those things in abundance. So I'm sure he came to this fight confident, so I couldn't give him anything to be confident about. So I had to start sharp, start fast, and be very positive, knowing that Mormeck isn't a big starter, knowing that he looks to conserve his energy for the later rounds. So I had to be comfortable with that and do damage whilst not exerting myself too much, not wasting punches, hitting arms and elbows, as that will be playing into his game plan.
Adam, I know it's only 30 seconds into the fight, but you must have been quietly pleased that Mormeck had come out exactly how you expected him to come out. He hadn't come up with a new plan. He'd come out like Jean Marc-Mormack.
Yeah, but he was never going to be anything other than Jean Marc-Mormack. And what I was looking at the entire time, and I remember it clearly, was looking at the energy that David was using to win the round and to control the fight, and also the space that he kept opening up with those little steps of his leg. His focus was incredible in that first round, but also was that careful flow and those constant little steps, so that Mormeck had to really work his arse off to try and get to that close range and keep tasting that low energy heavy handedness that David's got. And it was so to make it as difficult for him to get where he thought he was going to be, knowing that he's probably there at the moment thinking, okay, well, I'll get my time sooner or later. And that's how this round and the start of the fight certainly played out.
Dave, on the few occasions when you go close, could you sense his strength, or were you perhaps thinking, this guy's, oh, okay, he's a good fighter, we know that, but he's not that strong? What were you getting? What sense were you getting when you were close with him?
Anytime I hit him, it bounced off of him. I was actually surprised at how solid he was. You know, although he was shorter than me, weighed the same, but he was rock solid. When I was landing my shots around his neck and the top of the head, there wasn't much response from him. He didn't really show anything. And it felt like I was punching someone it felt like I was punching a heavyweight in there. Although he's got short dimensions, he was rock solid. And the only real time I could really soak the shots in and feel that, although he didn't show it, was the body shots. So I really wanted to take away his legs with those body assaults. As you can see, I'm whipping big long right hooks to his midsection any opportunity I can, and trying to stay comfortable against the ropes, as this is where he does his work. He knows it's 30 seconds to the end of the bell, so he has a big push and tries to steal the round. And on all of the judges' scorecards, I believe they probably scored this first round just for this big little push at the end of the round. But I was aware of that, and getting in close, as I did just then, and walking back was a massive part of the game plan.
So Adam, end of the first round, what are you most pleased at? What has David done that's most pleased you?
Well, there were 3 little drills that we rehearsed all the way through training for when that space was suffocating, where Mormeck got to where he wanted to be. So it's to make him work his arse off to get close, and then to have 3 different options. One is to punch, one is to actually try and skirt out and make distance, and the other one was to take a little dip, slide in close to him, tie him up and walk him back. So each time Mormeck arrived there, he didn't know what he was going to get met with, whether it was a shot, whether it was being tied up and walked back, or whether it was David skirting out again. And in that first round, I thought he did the sliding in and tying up immaculately.
Now we go into round 4 here, Dave. In rounds 2 and 3, it's been similar really to rounds 1, with Mormeck coming forward with his high guard. You'd never troubled him, but at the same time, he hadn't troubled you, Dave.
Yeah, at this stage, I'm feeling very confident. I can see what he's doing, and everything was going to plan. I could feel him. I felt comfortable whilst I was on the ropes with him. Every time he put assault and assault together, I was able to deal with it. So at this stage, I'm starting to relax a bit now and starting to get into my flow.
Now, with David starting to relax, Adam, is that something that concerned you slightly? You wanted him to stay on point, to stay unbelievably focused?
Yeah, I mean, in relax, it was like being settled into the fight and freeing his hands up. But, you know, the more you try and land, the more you're there to be caught. So that was kind of what plays out just now, where he got a bit greedy with his hands. Mormack let that one shot go, got caught on the temple, and then this moment happened that was rehearsed in training a lot of times. And I'll let David talk through that.
Yeah, in training, we anticipated that Mormack had the type of style to, put me down. One of the strengths I believe myself and Adam bring to the table is we're aware of our attributes and our shortcomings. So knowing that, I don't have a chin like Marvin Hagler, I was aware that I could get decked. And if I was to get decked, what do you do? What is the plan? So we sort of span around and round continuously until my head was spinning. Then we'd do some roly-polies in the ring and do pad work. So I had practiced being in this position I'm in right now with my head spinning and I'm holding everything together, knowing that I've lost the round, 10-8. Might as well just try to get through the round, taking as little damage as possible, as it's a 10-8 round to him. So let Mormack use his energy, and I managed to catch him with a cheeky shot around the back of the head there, got plenty of warning. But I needed that break as much as Mormack did. And I remember feeling, it was a tough situation to be in, but not a situation that I was flustered from. I wasn't bothered, because I remember going down on one knee thinking, looking at Adam, nodding to him, saying, yeah, it's okay, I'm okay, knowing I'd been there. I'd learned earlier on in my fight against Lelenga Mock, do not get up too fast. And I got up just at the right time, ready to get through the remainder of the round and do some good work of my own.
When you go down, when you touch down, there's a minute 40 left on the clock. And when you get up, Dave, it's obvious, even though your head seems to be clearing, that your legs are betraying you, that perhaps your legs are not actually paying attention to what you're telling them to do.
Yeah, but I was aware of that. I knew this could happen. I knew, if I get clipped on the temple or the chin by a powerful puncher like Mormack, your legs are going to go. So what do? You be prepared, you get your legs as fit as possible, as strong as possible, and your head spinning from time to time when you get hit with shots. So you practice it, we rehearsed it. It was just one of those things that happened, but I was fully aware at the time what was happening. And Mormack, to his credit, put together some nice shots after that and nailed me on the way down. But that's why he was the world champion, because he can throw short punches like this that do all kinds of damage. Here, my legs are completely gone. And Mormack, I think, nails me with a couple more shots now. Left hook, right hand. That was on the button as well. So, you learn lessons and you're aware of things. My head's completely sort of aware of what's happening at that time. And here we go for round 7. This is the point where myself and Adam Booth knew we had to start picking it up now, particularly after that knockdown. So we said, start picking up the pace and start putting a little bit more meat on the shots and look for some type of foothold in the fight.
But because you'd gone back at the end of the fourth, and Adam hadn't panicked, you'd coasted through number 5 and 6. And in this round here, Dave, could you sense at this point that if you called him right, you could finish it? Could you sense him tiring? Did you have any sense of what was coming up?
Right then I did. Once I saw him wobble, I knew that was it. I had him. So I just thought, okay, let me just let my hands go. I had plenty of energy. My power was at maximum strength. I hadn't used up any energy. And boom, that was it. One opportunity. Make sure that when you do get the opportunity, you're fully loaded. You're not punched out. You're fresh, you're fast, you're ready, quick feet, quick hands. And this is it. This is the moment that myself and Adam Booth have been training for 10 years. And that was it. It was a magical moment that not many fighters get to prove that they are number one. And there's no dispute. There's no dispute and no argument. Maybe Enzo Macronelli at the time had a bit of an argument, but I proved I was number one, Ring Magazine champion, and beat a man who held the IBF, WBC, and WBA titles, and I took him out in 7 rounds. It was a very, very nice feeling I'll never forget.
A very special night. Adam, when Mormack goes down, he seems to be about 18 inches in front of you. So you've got a great look in his face and a great look in his eyes. Did you know that if he got up, he couldn't continue? Did you know the fight was over at that point?
No, you don't let go that quickly when there's that much on it. There's a couple of things. When fighters go down face first, very rarely do they recover like fighters that go down on their backsides or on their knee. So there was the face first dropping beat. It was right in front of me. And there's a little bit where you see I tap my hand, and I can vividly remember, and I don't know if I said it out loud, but the words "stay down" rattled through my head until I realised he might get up. And I turned to David, and I was like, okay, and I make this twitching command as if to say, right, make sure that the next shot's not predictable, so that he shows you where the opening is. But so like I switched really quickly from this, oh, please be over. Oh, it's not over yet. Dave, go back to the job. And then it was.
At that point, David, when he does get up and the referee takes just half a second before he waves it off, and it's the right decision, what actually floods through your memory, floods through your heart at that point? I know you talked about it being the end of a journey for you and Adam, or the end of the first part of the journey, but what was your emotion, your actual emotion at that time?
It was just like a flood of relief and emotion and euphoria that I've done it, and I've done it on foreign soil against all the odds. Nobody believed I was going to do that, and I did it. All those naysayers, not only to me, to Adam Booth as well. You know, when I lost in my 11th fight against Carl Thompson, so many people, you know, said, you need to get a trainer with some experience. You know, he didn't know what he was doing. He was out of his depth, blah, blah, blah. And it was both of me and Adam's way of proving to everybody that we know what the hell we're doing. Shut up and let us do our thing.
It was a crucial night, as David says there, Adam. It was a crucial night for you, especially. A lot was on the line. And it seems to me that was the start of people understanding and realising just how meticulous your planning was. And I think the great example of that is the spinning around, making David dizzy and then continue, which without a doubt, in my opinion, got him through that fourth round. It must have felt good for you as you made your way back to your dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, I was numb, just numb with happiness, and it was just an incredible achievement of David to do that. Only in hindsight now, I realise just how unique that achievement was and the way that David went about it. Because like I said, at the time, we're just a couple of young upstarts that naively thought, yeah, we know what we're doing, we know how to do this. Even though there was a lot of evidence to say we didn't. Yet there was this, whether it was, you know, sublime intellectual confidence or ignorance, it didn't matter, because the end result was what it was.
The end result was exactly what it was. Well, that was what went down in Paris back in 2007. Adam, you're going to be joining me a bit later in the show to talk over one or two other elements of a very, very different night, one night in East London. But I'm going to bring in now former WBC super middleweight champion of the world and Olympic bronze medalist, Richie Woodall.
You all right, guys?
Richie, we've just watched David Haye dismantle Jean Marc-Mormack and get himself dropped. Now, you know how hard it is to go to a man's hometown, to beat the #1 in the world, and to do it on a Don King show. It's difficult, Rich. That was some achievement, what we saw there in Paris, wasn't it?
It was a magnificent achievement from David Haye. Yeah, I know what it's all about. I've fought a Don King fighter, obviously Keith Holmes, in '96, and it didn't go my way that time. It's very difficult when you're away from home. Lots of obstacles are put in front of you, and you have to be not only physically strong, but very mentally strong as well. But he really came through it, and he won the fight, probably due to the Carl Thompson fight. You know, the guys have spoke about that, but it was a different David Haye, because let's face it, he had a bad fourth round, and he got caught with a really good shot. But he recovered, and you could see in his eyes that he was a totally different boxer compared to the one that fought Carl Thompson. He recovered well. And let's face it, there's a minute 40 on the clock for Mormack to finish the job off. But David got up, composed himself, and then he knew where he was. He recognised the situation. He didn't panic, and he weathered the storm, and he came back. And one thing about David Haye, he can be, you know, rounds and rounds behind. He wasn't. I think he was in front. We all know he was in front in that fight. But the beauty of David Haye is he can be 10 rounds down, but he has the power just to turn a contest around like that. But I thought it was a magnificent display. He was winning the fight, and he finished him off brilliantly in the 7th round.
And of course, what you'd like about it, Rich, is the fact that it wasn't just the finish, it was the tactics, and the tactics had to be stuck to. You couldn't just have a round of tactics, you had to have every second of every round until Mormeck was finished or David Haye's hand was raised.
Exactly. Mormeck, you know, is a good champion. He's on home soil, got the crowd behind him. But he's a big puncher himself. Going into that contest, he'd had over 20 knockouts himself, Mormeck. Dangerous kid, very compact. Probably needed a little bit more head movement against David. But with David Haye, any boxer going forward with slow feet, you're going to walk onto one of those Hayemaker right hands. You've got to move your head, and you've got to move it very, very quickly. And if your feet are slow, then you're going to have problems. And I remember when David Haye first turned professional, you know, he was knocking guys out left, right and centre because David Haye, remember, he was a very good amateur. He boxed as an international, England international. He got a world silver in 2001 in Belfast against a really good Cuban, and he dropped the Cuban and gave him a standing count of 8, Arlenia Solis from Cuba. So he had good boxing skills anyway. But as an international amateur, he's against boxers with fast-moving feet themselves. So it's a bit more difficult to nail them with a big shot. When he turns pro, they're slower, probably tougher opponents, but they're slower moving boxers in front of him. And if you've got slow feet against David Haye, who's got a good jab, everyone goes on about his right hand, but he can jab very well. He can set that big right hand up. And if you're moving your feet slow, coming forward in straight lines with no head movement, then you're going to walk onto that big punch of his.
Richie, thank you very much. Establishing there quite firmly David Haye, the don't blink cruiserweight, soon to be the don't blink heavyweight.